To thank you all for your interest in the solutions in the ISOC 24 portfolio.
Hi everyone, hi Mark. Thanks for inviting me for that session. So my name is Friedrich von Jackwitz. I'm an SE for LogPoint, and today I want to present my product to show you what it is about, what is unique in that product, and what makes it very interesting. Here in my main screen, you see an overview of what LogPoint is, and I think you have already had some time to read and to see what it is. So you find that LogPoint is a European vendor, that it is easy to implement, that it comes out of the box, that we have a data privacy mode. So many terms, and perhaps you had already time to think about what does that mean. And my task for now is to give you some explanations on that. And later on, I will show you how the product looks and feels in a demo. And also, I will try to explain you the value that you can get out of that product. So in case you have some questions, of course, you can raise hands like Mark said. And after my presentation, I will be happy to have a short Q&A session with every one of you. So LogPoint is a European SIEM vendor. We are founded in Copenhagen in Denmark, and this is where our headquarters resides also today. Nevertheless, we have offices in Stockholm, London, Paris, Munich, and also in Boston in the US. I am part of the German team, so I am located in Munich, and I'm happy to work for a European vendor, as if you look to the security landscape, there are not too many of them. Our development team is located in Kathmandu. You can see that on the world map. So we have a strong collaboration of the European colleagues with the Nepalese colleagues. LogPoint is a solution that is very easy to implement. So it is a kind of an appliance that can be used virtually, so you can install a VMware-based appliance, or we support Hyper-V as well, but you can also implement LogPoint on physical machines or even in the cloud. So we do provide you with images for Microsoft Azure Cloud or AWS. So this is a part of the implementation, which is really easy. So you start the appliance and it is there. So you just have to create a license and then you can start working with it. This is one point. And the other point is, so one of the challenges of the SIEM system is that log files from the different systems will always differ in the way they are built. So a log file from a NetApp storage device will be totally different from what you find from an Exchange email server or from a Palo Alto firewall. So the challenge will be to bring all those log files in a format that makes them comparable. As if you want to track what an attacker is doing in your environment, you need to have an overview of all those logs. And this is exactly what LogPoint provides you with our unique taxonomy. So this means we have one way to reformat the logs, and we have a very easy to learn search language, which is pretty close to other popular languages. And so I myself learned it very fast, as I am confident in my capacities in writing and reading PowerShell scripts. And so this was pretty easy. And you can see per module, we have 2 days. So this means if you are doing an advanced administrator training and administrator training, you will have 4 days invested, and the same thing is for the user trainings. So if you want to bring your team up to speed, this will not cost you too much time. Our implementation and use is very easy, and this has been recognized by Gartner as well as by the software reviews. And I think the software reviews recognition is something we are very proud of, because it reflects direct from the field feedback from our customers. Our deployment is flexible and scalable. So we have different architectural building blocks. So how are we working with the logs? We are collecting them, we are storing them, and then of course we try to get some information out of them using our analytics building block. And in this drawing, you can see that there are many ways to roll out a LogPoint implementation, from the all-in-one appliance down to the high availability installation with a certain level of complexity. So you're pretty free to build a LogPoint deployment following your requirements. One of the most acknowledged points of LogPoint is our license modeling. So our pricing is very and absolutely predictable. So what you can see here is that LogPoint is licensing the number of log sources. So let's say you have 1,000 servers, and these 1,000 servers are sending logs to the SIEM system. Then LogPoint can tell you, okay, you need 1,000 licenses. And if you have another 1,000 client computers, then LogPoint can tell you, okay, then you need 1,000 light licenses, which is the same as 100 licenses. So we can tell you how many licenses you need. And then it's up to you to decide to what extent do you want to log. So let's say you start with a basic logging. So you start your Active Directory logging, your DNS logging, your endpoint logging, all this, then you will have a certain amount of logs. And if after your first or second audit and certification, you decide to go deeper to enable, very fine granular firewall logging or even Active Directory, you start you want to see all, for example, the logs for all the Kerberos tickets, then you will create more log volume. From the license perspective, there will be no change. So your security decisions are not influenced by financial reasons. And I think this is what you should expect from a security system. And I think this is something that distinguishes LogPoint from other SIEM systems in the market. LogPoint has a common criteria EAL3+ certification. And this EAL3+ certification is something that is always bound to a certain product version. So I know that there is one competitor who has the EAL3+ certification of a product version from 2010, but LogPoint has the EAL3+ certification for our version 5.2.5, and we are currently recertifying our version 6.8 to make sure that we are going to have an EAL3+ certification ongoing. And this means that you can expect that LogPoint has a certain level of security and quality. And I think as common criteria as the international standard for software assurance certification, this means a lot to have such a certification. And it can assure you that your SIEM system brings the required level of security itself. So I think that's a very good point, and I think it's unique. Our reporting engine supports you to use reports for communication. Very often we see that products have a kind of reporting, and this reporting contains some output from the system. So maybe some numbers, maybe some key risk indicators, maybe some lines of explanation, but what are reports for? And usually you can say a report is intended to communicate an IT-related topic to your business stakeholders. And this is something you really want to do. So if you're creating reports from your SIEM system to involve people from the business into your cybersecurity strategy, then you need reports that are, first of all, understandable, but that contain also some explanations on what you are transporting there. So what do you want to tell them with that report? The very advanced reporting capabilities of LogPoint help you to do that. I know that there are many products on the market who have limited reporting capabilities, and I think this is something that LogPoint makes very good. And this will help you to integrate LogPoint in your overall cybersecurity strategy, and not only to have a product, that can manage your logs and alert you on incidents. Out of the box, we bring a lot of dashboards, rules, use cases, and search queries. So this is cool because you're not supposed to create the content yourself, but you have a certain starting point. You can use it for to get started, and then you can also make use of all this content to use that for your own queries and for your own work, so that you are not required to build everything yourself. And I think that's really good, and I see our customers using that extensively. To integrate third-party systems, we have application packages, and I think this is also one of the points that make LogPoint's a very good product. So LogPoint is an open product. So LogPoint is not doing everything itself. So for example, LogPoint is not able to do some vulnerability scans, but LogPoint is prepared to get the input from, I would say, most of the vulnerability scanners that are available on the market. And I think that's cool because LogPoint is really focusing on being strong in detection and to integrate third-party evidence into the system itself. So we are receiving your logs, but we can integrate a lot more. And here you can see it. So we can get the logs from the network, from endpoints. We can import threat intelligence feed from third-party vendors as Bluelive or Recorded Future or FireEye. We can fetch the logs from the cloud, whether it's Amazon Web Services or Office 365. We can integrate your firewalls. We can get the log from your databases, as well as we can get content from your database to have additional context to your logs to understand what is that about. And if you have applications that you have created yourself and who have some log formats that will not be available in another place, then LogPoint is able to work with those logs as well, because we have a normalization engine that is easily manipulatable. So you can create your own normalization packages to make the LogPoint solution understand your logs. And I think that's a very strong capability, and it's a necessary capability, because what you want is to have context around the logs that you have to understand what's going on in your environment. And last but not least, we integrate with SOA systems like Swimlane or DF Labs. So these are automated response solutions, so that you are not only strong in prevention and detection, what LogPoint delivers, but also in the response cycle, in the response stage of the cybersecurity cycle. And that you can, so that you are enabled to build a fully integrated cybersecurity solution for your organization. LogPoint is, let's say, lightning fast. So LogPoint is really fast searching your logs for information, as we don't use relational databases to do that, but we are storing the logs as flat files on the file system, and then we're creating indexes. One index is going over the raw logs, so we are really able to search all your logs in a short amount of time, but also creating an index about the normalized logs, and the normalized logs are these who are comparable independently from the log source they are coming from. And this index is super, super fast and enables you to build very good searches and especially to correlations that enable you to understand if someone is preparing an attack or even in your network as an advanced persistence threat. And that will enable you also to create countermeasures before you start losing data. Of course, a SIEM system may be costly from a hardware perspective. So of course, all this technology is eating a large amount of hardware, depending on how many logs you are working with. But what LogPoint delivers you, or what LogPoint is providing you, is that you can, depending on your requirements, keep the logs for longer times. And the amount of time when the most load is on the logs is the time during which you have continuous searches on the logs. And during this time, you will probably need flash storage to answer the requirements. But for later on, maybe you want to do a long-term analysis after an incident, then you can have the logs on much slower storage. And this tiering technology that we provide you with enables you to make your own design and to use only the resources you really think you should have. And I think from a cost perspective and a total cost of ownership perspective, this is a very strong feature, and this will help you a lot. For the analyst, this is totally transparent. So the analyst will not see that there are different storage types under the hood, but he will see one index that he is searching on. Especially with GDPR, we see that people understand that some data is really sensitive, and especially when it comes to names or sometimes even IP addresses, people want to have that anonymized. And LogPoint has a data privacy mode, so we can hide some of the fields that are coming with the logs. And the analyst himself will only see some kind of encrypted string, and this string may be decrypted after a process that is also shipped with the product. So if you are enabling that data privacy mode, and let's say you configure that you want to encrypt the usernames so that no one can see them, or that the analyst cannot see the usernames, then you will also have a process implemented that if the analyst needs to see that username, then he can request access, and this one can be granted by some person of trust. I don't know who that could be, but many companies have such people, and then you have a 4 eyes principle to have a look into this sensitive data. And in Germany, we see this requirement very often due to GDPR, but also as the employees do not like to see their names in such a system. But that depends on your requirements. LogPoint at least has the option to do that. And of course, the correlation and enrichment is very strong LogPoint. So we can collect more or less every source that you want to see. There are few sources that we cannot. For example, the Google G Suite, currently we have no option to collect those logs, but I would say most of the logs that are available, we can. And then we are normalizing them and classifying them. So every log gets a label on what it is about. So if you see, for example, that a log is documenting access on an endpoint, so a login on an endpoint, it will get a classification lab login. And I think that's a very strong thing, because this helps you to see all the successful logins overall systems. So you are not looking only into one system, but you can see that overall systems. And of course, we are working with enrichment so that we are adding additional context to the log data. It might be threat intelligence data, this may be vulnerability scan data, this might be some organizational data from your CMDB. So you're really free to use what you want to understand what your logs are telling you. one of the key points of a SIEM system is that you are visualizing technical data. And this is what we do. So our dashboards and our widgets are showing you some, let's say, are trying to visualize what happens in your environment. So we're trying to explain you with a picture what's going on. And I think that's strong because we have some, we have lots of ways to visualize. And what I like most is that for different use cases, we have appropriate ways to show that. So you see a word map, you see a donut chart, but you can also visualize processes like activities and so on. And I think that this will help you also to visualize different kinds of attacks. So as I mentioned before, with LogPoint, you have a short learning curve. And I think that's one of the strongest points, because if I would be prepared to procure a new SIEM system, I would like my team to be up and running after a short amount of time and not to spend weeks of training before we can start working. But nevertheless, we are not only analyst driven, but we also have the option to work with unsupervised machine learning. So this unsupervised machine learning complements our SIEM rules and use cases. And I think that's very good because we have a low time to value, and this works really, really good. So you will understand or let's say, this will help you understand the unknown unknowns. So the things that you cannot predict, the use cases that you do not know, and also the attack vectors that are not already known will become or may become visible with this unsupervised machine learning. And we see that customers are really happy about what this is contributing to their cybersecurity strategy. And in many RFI and RFP documents, we find that as a requirement. So I think if I'm looking in the current breach reports, we find many of them who do not have any artificial intelligence or machine learning solution in place. And I think if you don't have such a thing, it will always be difficult to cover all thinkable use cases. And of course, we are able to integrate with those security orchestration, automation, response tools. There are different tools on the market, but we integrate with them to transport the evidence or intelligence that you get from the detection tool, what a SIEM is, into a reaction tool to make sure that you don't only understand that you're attacked, but that you're also able to stop the attack or in an automated way. I think that's perfect, and especially if you're a security officer, you may want to have such a thing to be less dependent on human errors. I think everyone knows Gartner, so Gartner has a very good opinion of LogPoint. So what you see here is that we change from the niche players to the visionaries, and this is something that we are very proud of. We are the single vendor here being in the visionaries. And if you are looking into the overall ratings, you will find that LogPoint is very often is high rated, and that especially our customers do respect and like us very much. The software reviews is not so much business driven as Gartner, because Gartner is really looking into your financial situation. How is your funding? Do you have an office in the US and so on? But the software reviews is really doing interviews with customers. And if you're looking into this quadrant, you will see that the customers are giving fantastic feedback on LogPoint. So we are really, I think we are number one in that quadrant. And so the interviews reflect that organizations and security people who are working with LogPoint are absolutely happy with that solution. And you find the different SIEM categories where LogPoint is a winner. And I think, or I would like to highlight the ease of data integration, the ease of IT administration, and the ease of customization. So I think if you want to characterize what LogPoint is, it is an easy system. So if you want to onboard with LogPoint, this will not be a one-year project, but this is something that you can do within a very short amount of time. And so if you want to be up and running with a SIEM solution, then LogPoint is your choice, probably. Well, that's about a LogPoint, so the solution I wanted to present you today. And now let's go to the demo, and I will show you a bit how that looks and feels like, so you get your an impression of what it is. So this is one example of a SOC dashboard. So what you see here is a world map, and you see the access to Office 365 from non-US states. And so here we are in Europe. So my customers usually build a dashboard that is showing you the non-German Office 365 activity. And I have seen that one customer found out that they had a breach. So one of the salespeople lost his identity in hotel Wi-Fi, and they had a login every night between 3 and 4 in the morning into his email mailbox. And I think that nothing happened there, but it was a script that just checked whether or not that account was available yet. But they found out that this happened because they've seen that the login came from a country this company had absolutely no relation with. And so I think, even Office 365 has a lot of security measures and a lot of prevention tools, but with regards to detection, it helps a lot to have something like this LogPoint SIEM tool that can highlight what happens in the background, and that can also help you to understand when you have to react. And nevertheless, so we have that world tree map. We have also some, you can work with tables. You can publish some key risk indicators or key performance indicators. So depends on what you need and what you want, but you can do it. So this is my message. The system itself is very open, and we can also integrate different vulnerability scanners. And I think this is something that people do today very often. So many of the organizations I'm working with have some vulnerability scanners, whether it is Qualys, Nessus, Tenable, OpenVAS, or Rainbow. And so there are so many of them. And I think the main value is not only to get reports out of these systems, but also to get the evidence that comes out of those vulnerability scanners, to get that evidence into another system that can build a correlation and an overview, and that can enrich that information with other information that can provide you with context of what does that mean. So the fact that you have, let's say that you have a lot of open ports in your environment, or that you are using weak encryption keys, or that there are known software weaknesses in your software, so you have clients that are not patched and so on. All this information needs to be, let's say, brought into correlation with your other information, and then you will understand whether or not you have to react. And what vulnerability scanners can provide you with is, for example, here you can see, is it a critical risk or a high risk, or what is going on? And what LogPoint provides you with is that we can correlate the data. So we are getting the data, we are putting that data into our system, and then we can see, for example, there is a computer with a known vulnerability, and maybe we see some suspicious activity on that computer, and then you will know that you have to do something. But we also integrate with session recording tools. So Darktrace is one example, but there are also additional in the market. So you can see what is specifically happening, what is happening during a session, where is a breach happening. Those session recording tools may give you also an indication whether or not it is a breach that is happening. So this is something you can see here. is it a breach or it is not a breach? And if it is a breach, how did it happen? On what computer did it happen? In which network it is going on? What do you know about the tool? So all this needs to be visualized, and LogPoint is able to do that. I would say in a way that gives you a pretty good overview. And on the first glance, you can see, do I need to do something or not? And of course, when it comes to threat intelligence, so indicators of compromise are something that you probably may want to have or to know. And of course, you can create your own indicators of compromise. So this means that you should or you must know the use cases. I give you an example. You have an external firewall and you see a port scan from an IP address. And so you want to know, is this a malicious IP address or not? And there are lots of providers who can give you some information on that. So you are getting feeds from them, and then you can integrate that as a enrichment in your SIEM system. And as you can see here, we have critical stack, Proofpoint, thesis, recorded future, but there are many more. So you're really free to use the one you want, and you can use the data they provide you with to understand what's going on the outer side, but also on the inner side of your network. So if you can see that there is an endpoint talking with a malicious IP address, maybe this person has been a victim of a phishing attack. And I think this is something that is what people want, and it's the same thing with ransomware. So ransomware is something that is really bad and may cause a lot of damage in an organization. And nevertheless, it is very well possible that there are indicators showing you that someone is providing to create damage with ransomware. And this might be that you find a lot of emails that are sent to your employees with suspicious content, that maybe you find identities doing lateral movement, that maybe you find internal people exfiltrating data. And sometimes it's not the people, so they don't even know that they are exfiltrating data, but it's only their identity who that has been taken away. And then people use it just to exfiltrate data. And all this is stuff that you want to see, and you want to protect your business to be damaged by that. And we find that many organizations cannot be protected by their IT department because the IT department is heavily relying on preventive action, but they do not have too many capabilities on detection. But detection is very important, and to understand whether or not your preventive actions are effective or not. And I think there is no solution to build the preventive action which will be 100% secure, except not using computers. Well, and then let's have a look into our UEBA solution. So UEBA means that we have unsupervised machine learning, and this unsupervised machine learning works with, let's say, 2 focus points. So we have, on the one hand, we have strong use cases. So if you want to look here, we have potential expense duplication, potential account misuse, potential infected host, potential data exfiltration, potential lateral movement, all that stuff. And these are use cases that are hard-coded in the system. And on top, we build baselines for every entity, like a user, a website, a server, or a share. And then we are also building a peer baseline. So for an entity, there are other entities with a similar behavior, and then we can say, like with sheep, this is a group of people, or this is a group of entities, and these entities are supposed to behave similarly. And if you have a low and slow attacks, like you have in advanced persistent threat scenarios, then you will probably not see that that a user is behaving strange because they are running very slow and the baseline is changing. But you will see that this entity is going away from its peer group. And also this will be an indicator that something is wrong. And I will show you how this looks like in the field. So this would be your dashboard from your EBA, and this is about 24 hours. So you see in the last 24 hours, you have had 6 extreme risk incidents. You have some incidents with low risk and one with medium risk. But if you are extending that for the last 7 days or even for the last 30 days, then you will see that that something is going on there and that the risk is going higher and higher. And you may want to see what is the most risky things, and you want to see the incidents, but you will probably also want to understand the entities who are linked to that risk. And so you can focus here and say, okay, here I do only want to see the extreme risks, and you see that then there is only one user entities, but you can also you can filter also for other entities, not only on user accounts. But let's remain on that, and you will see that this user account caused a couple of incidents here. And if you're going into these incidents, you will try to understand what's going on here, what's happening, and you go onto this one and you see, oh, the user is working outside his usual office hours. And maybe you will find an explanation. So maybe he's traveling, maybe he's on holiday, maybe he's working from home. And so only on this incident, you will not, becoming nervous. But as you can see, there are other things that are happening at the same time. Then you might become, interested and start looking into it. And here you can find how we compare that. So we observed that this user did an upload of 1.3 gigabytes, but we have the value of uploads he did the last month, and we would say the expected highest for that user would be 30 megabytes, and the expected average for that user is about 1 megabyte. And if we compare that to his peer group, so the entities that have a similar behavior like him, it's even less. So what we see here is this is really something we would say it is suspicious. And if you want, to drill down, to dive deeper, you can come from this dashboard, from I think this pretty sophisticated dashboard. You can go down to the logs themselves. So you get the logs that document that this user is uploading data. And if you need that to, for documentation purposes, you can go there and you can export the logs from the system, for documentation purposes. And I think this would be exactly what I expect from such a solution. And so what I showed you here is how that works, and we have we have all those dashboards, all this content that comes with the solution, but nevertheless, we also have interactive dashboards that we call search templates. And I think this is something very good. So search templates enable you to involve business users more and more into the cybersecurity strategy. So let's say you have some sensitive groups, so groups that provide sensitive permissions for users, then you can give this search template to a business user. So for example, this one, so you can see what's happening in the groups. And let's say the head of finance or the assistants of the head of finance can track what is happening with our finance group, and then understand whether or not there are people who have permissions they shouldn't have, or if there are administrators doing things with the groups or the user accounts that they should not do. And I think this will help, because IT usually has the right to work with users and groups and to give permissions and to remove permissions. But usually IT has not too much the idea of who should have permissions, but the business knows very, very good. So what we need is something to bridge the gap between IT and business, and I think the search templates are excellent to do that. Yes, and I think let's just jump into the alert rules. So LogPoint is shipping a lot of alert rules out of the box. If you are looking into the rules, you can find the vendor rules that LogPoint is shipping, and it's almost 700. And so these are predefined alerts that you can use directly. And as you can see here, LogPoint is working on mapping our alerts with the MITRE ATT&CK framework to enable you to understand who is the attacker and to create some fingerprint on people who are trying to hack your network. And I think that's a very strong capability, and many of the large organizations are really requesting that. But nevertheless, the LogPoint alerts can also be sent to other systems in your infrastructure, maybe your ticketing system or a SOAR system. So it depends on what you want to have. Well, Mark, with regards to the time, do you think I should go ahead showing more details, or do you think we should start with the Q&A session?
I think we should start with the Q&A session. Friedrich, thank you very much for this good presentation that provides a good overview of what LogPoint actually can do. Let's wait for some questions to arrive. We'll take 2 minutes for that, and then we'll do the wrap up if we don't get any questions. So please use the raise hand option if you have a question. We will then unmute you so you can ask the question. Thank you. A question coming in for the licensing model, Friedrich.
Yes.
What they're asking is, so it's a license that's divided between the systems, the servers, the log delivering devices, and the workstations, and the workstations have different pricing. Is that correct?
So it is correct. Usually we say our license model is 100% transparent. So if you have a system like a firewall or a server, or I don't know, it is one node, depending, So if I have an IP address sending me logs, this is one node. But if the node is sending less than 1,000 logs per day, we call it a light node. And we see this with some kinds of switches, and of course with some types of endpoints and so on. And so if a node is sending less than 1,000 events per day, then it is a light node. And a light node is only 10% of a normal node. And the second exception is if you have an endpoint, so a laptop or an end user workstation, then this is always a light node.
Okay, clear. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the question, by the way.